Welcome to the Mason Guard Show. Unscripted, uncensored, unapologetic. Hello, everyone, and welcome once more to the Mason Guard Show. I'm Ed Guard.
I'm Scott Mason. Fuck you, no.
I'm Scott Mason.
And I'm Ed Guard.
And we are back with a brand new on-the-spot Top 5. If you're a first-time listener, this is where we have a selection of topics, and before the show, we choose one of them basically out of a hat, and we have about 10 to 15 minutes to kind of prepare our top 5 list. It's meant to kind of simulate the barroom argument. These are in no way definitive lists. They're just what we kind of come up with off the top of our head, and this one was a really tough one because it's a very, very broad topic. Ed, why don't you tell the people what we're going to be debating today?
Today we decided to go with best villains. Now this is difficult because there are so many villains, so we narrowed this down not very much, just to movies.
Yeah, because again, if we brought TV into this, I would not have been able to narrow this down to 5 people in time. Even as it was, I was literally down to the alarm going off before I kind of decided what my final order would be. So, Ed, did you have any real criteria going into this? Anything that you were thinking of?
I think I just chose sort of villains that stood out to me. And I'll go into a little bit as we go through the list, but stuff that really stuck with me.
Yeah, I was along the same lines. Those villains that just chill you to the bone and you don't forget who they are. So let's jump right in. Why not? Number 5, Ed, what you bringing?
So I went with a Gary Oldman character. Now, obviously, Gary Oldman's ability to transform into characters is really well known. If you love movies, you know Gary Oldman.
Particularly villains.
That's right. And so I gave this one to the true pill-popping lunatic Norman Sansfield from Luc Besson's Leon the Professional. So Oldman plays a murderous detective in the NYPD who murders Natalie Portman's whole family, including some young children. This scene is crazy. It opens up with him taking his pill. When you see him do it for the first time, and he's sort of looking straight up, and the camera's straight down on his face. He bites into the pill, and then he does that thing that he does, which is so crazy. And he says a quote there that just stuck with me. He went, I like these calm moments before the storm. It reminds me of Beethoven. And it's just so creepy. There's a later scene, and he then goes on to shotgun murder an entire family of people. Which obviously brings out the whole story of Leon the Professional, which is a revenge story from a little girl. So intense. Another script piece that he delivers when Natalie Portman goes to try and kill him. She shows up with a bag full of guns, and she's just a little kid. And he realizes he says this quote where he's like, "Is this personal?" And she's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, what filthy piece of shit thing did I do now?" It's just so bone chilling. And then his famous line at the end of that movie where he's like, bring everyone in, and he's like, they're like, who? And he's like, everyone goes crazy. Just such an intense villain. And this is what I was mentioning when we were talking about how I chose. I saw this movie when I was very young. And this was one of the first times a villain was in a position of like pure power as a police officer and a detective in the NYPD. So that sort of level of awfulness coming from what's supposed to be a good guy role just stuck with me, and that's why he got my number 5 spot.
Certainly chilling. I love his death at the end of that movie as well. The "For Matilda" line.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gets me every time. So I love that movie. I think that is a great pick. But I think I'm gonna do someone who's just even a bit more chilling because there's no method to his madness. I'm talking about from No Country for Old Men, Anton Chigurh.
Okay.
So No Country for Old Men obviously is a fantastic movie. This is played by Javier Bardem. Very iconic look. I think, the second you see him, you're like, yeah, I know that guy. And he chills you to the bone instantly just from looking at him. But what really makes him insane is that he has no reason to his killing. Sometimes it's the flip of a coin and you live. Sometimes it's the flip of a coin and you die. And that's just haunting, right? There's nothing you can do to affect your own fate. It really can come down to the whims of a madman. And then you bring in his method of execution. The guy uses a cattle stud gun. Like, this literally just shoots a stud into your brain, killing you. Oh, like, that thought alone just sticks with me as, like, I can't imagine a worse way to die than that. And again, the randomness to me is what makes him insane. Gary Oldman's a villain with a plan. This guy just kills at will.
So I'm going to have to admit that this is a gap for me. I've never seen this movie. So
Ed, you are missing out. I know.
So it's actually on my list. I haven't gotten to it, but I do intend to watch it. But I'm going to have to leave this one up to you. And you have to be honest now. Who is the more iconic villain here? Is it Leon the Professional, or is it from No Country for Old Men?
So, if you were to ask me what is the better movie, hands down it's Leon the Professional. That probably makes a top 10, maybe even a top 5 list for me, absolutely, when it comes down to the movie. But I think that's everyone that makes that. No Country for Old Men is a good movie, but it is Javier Bardem who makes that movie. It is his performance. It is, again, just how chilling he is as that villain that really carries it. So if you're really giving this to me, I'm gonna claim that as a victory, because Anton Chigurh is just so bone-chillingly terrifying to me.
All right, you're gonna win this one. I'm gonna have to watch that movie and let you know later how I feel about this decision. But
we have a lot of movies that we actually probably do need to revisit from these top 5s, where both of us have admitted holes.
For sure,
we should have like a revisit episode or something like that. All right, that's mine. Number 5. Number 4. I as the winner, I'll take this one because it's a bit of a fun, unique one here. I wanted to try to think outside the box. And so this is not just a villain, this is a group of villains. I'm talking about the Sanford Neighborhood Watch Alliance from Hot Fuzz. Yeah, you didn't see that one coming, did you?
What a choice.
So for those of you who have seen Hot Fuzz, of course, there are people getting murdered around the town of Sanford, where Simon Pegg's character, I can't remember his name for the life of me right now, has been transferred. And when it turns out, the big reveal at the end is that it's this entire Neighborhood Watch Alliance that are doing this to help their town win the Best Village of the Year award. It's a silly little premise, but it's executed to absolute perfection, and they're doing it all for the memorable line of the greater good.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I was hoping you'd repeat it for me. The greater good. I love it. It's so good. Who do you have at number 4? Who can you bring to compete with that?
My number 4 spot went to a very different genre. I went for Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, Louise Fletcher in this movie is a true monster. Her method of demoralizing and punishing the patients throughout this movie is just chilling. The shock treatment scenes are, something I'd never seen before in a movie. Again, I saw this one when I was very young, so it stuck with me. Like, something you do, like, it sticks in your mind. She humiliates these people. She breaks them down and just, does horrible things. Like, one of the scenes that sticks to my mind is, obviously these people, are not the same mental capacity you'd expect them to have. So when she's breaking them down, asking them if they're ashamed of their behaviors, and one of them in particular, Billy, she threatens to tell his mom on him, and it just breaks him down, and later he commits suicide in this movie. Just a true manipulative bad person, and it really, if you know this character, you know exactly what I'm thinking of. It's just one of those people who really sticks with you, and she got my number 4 spot because of it.
So, I now have to admit a hole as well. I have not seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Been on my list for quite some time, but just never one that I've had an opportunity to really dive into or kind of been in the mood, because I know it's not necessarily an easily consumed movie, right? From what you're kind of describing, it sounds like it's uncomfortable to watch at times, and it actually makes me think of someone else who almost made my list, was from Full Metal Jacket. The drill sergeant, just, the way he wears down humans. I considered putting him in there, but because he's only half the movie, I didn't. So ironic again. It's going to sound like we planned this, but I'm going to have to throw this to you to make the decision on this because I have no basis for it.
I just think that
I know mine is a bit silly, but I do want to argue that their whole morality is basically the ends justify the means, no matter what. Which again, killing any number of people, even just an innocent golden statue man, makes them evil.
I think that if you sat down and watched this movie and I know your opinions on mental health, this would stick with you as well. So I absolutely think that Nurse Ratched deserves this spot.
All right, I'll give that to you again. I don't doubt it because it's certainly on my list to revisit.
Great. So Nurse Ratched at number 4. So my number 3 spot is a little bit more comedic, and it was difficult to choose which role I really wanted to throw out here. I almost want to give my number 3 spot just to Alan Rickman, as a villain. But I'm going to narrow that down, and probably what you're thinking is Hans Gruber. No, I'm not going with Hans Gruber. I'm actually going with
Snape.
Nope. I'm going with the Sheriff of Nottingham from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I know that
Ed, what a mistake you've made.
No, I'm telling you that this guy is just incredible in this movie as a villain. You almost love him because he's so twisted in this movie. Every sneer and eye roll is just fantastic. His speech about cutting your heart out with a spoon because it's dull, you twit, it'll hurt more. It's just so incredible. One of the quotes I put down was, cancel kitchen scraps for the lepers and the orphans, no more merciful beheadings, and call off Christmas. It's just amazing. He kills his cousin in this movie, and then he says, well, at least I didn't use a spoon. The scenes with this crazy witch, just a legendary performance from him. A great villain. Alan Rickman's a legend, and he got my number 3 spot.
All right. I certainly did not see that one coming. You don't stand a chance this round, though, Ed. This was someone who I debated at number 1 because they do literally chill me to the bone. The very first scene of theirs is so iconic. I'm talking about Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards.
Okay, good choice.
So Christoph Waltz, obviously, and as soon as, again, I say that first scene, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's the scene where he talks about being the Jew hunter, and he's interviewing that guy, and he plays it so innocent, and that's what's so evil about him, is he toys with people. He knows he's got the upper hand, and he just loves to just play them like a fiddle. I really think of the great scene where he runs into Shoshana at the restaurant and just, I've got to ask her a few questions because obviously she's the cinema owner. And that scene plays out, and to this day, you don't know, does he know at that moment? I like to think he does because he orders a glass of milk for her. I think that's the giveaway, that he does know this whole time who he's talking to. And again, I think that just makes him so evil. But then you wrap it up to his whole plan was to end the war. That's actually a pretty noble pursuit for a villain, but again, his means are absolute pure evil. He's the most evil of the Nazis. He's willing to betray even Nazis. Like, that's how the depths of depravity that this man sinks to. He certainly obviously gets his comeuppance at the end and gets that Nazi insignia carved into his forehead, but for the whole rest of this movie, I think he is just hands down one of the most intimidating, scary presences the screen has ever seen.
Alan Rickman, though.
Again, if you picked other Alan Rickmans, this might have been more of a fight, but you tried to have fun with this one. And it just happened. It came up against the monster.
He is a monster. I almost want to just play some of these scenes because I guarantee you don't remember how fantastic Alan Rickman is in this movie.
I will admit my view might be skewed by my thoughts of Kevin Costner movies.
No, forget Kevin Costner. Forget everybody else. If you just watch some highlights of this role, you would remember. But you're right. Alan Rickman up against a true monster.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You can have this one.
Perfect. So let's move on to number 2. I'll go first on this one. Because I wanted to, again, I wanted to think outside the box. I thought it would be very easy to just go pure humanoid for this. But there was one villain that I felt deserved a lot of credit because they changed cinema. I am talking about Bruce the Shark from Jaws. Okay. Now, of course, he's not actually named Bruce. That was just the nickname for the mechanical shark. Just the shark from Jaws. I think when you combine everything that this movie does, it creates suspense. I mean, it is that scary of a movie. My memories of this movie, I was a kid up at a cottage, and my parents were like, no, you can't watch this movie, go to bed. And I snuck out of bed and started to watch it through the crack of this door. And the first scene I saw was the kid dying on the raft. Like with that big, huge explosion, gush of blood comes up. And I started crying. I gave myself away trying to watch this movie in the hall. It terrified the hell out of me back then. Even now, that movie is scary, and it's because of the lack of presence of the shark, combined with the John Williams' amazing score and the way Steven Spielberg shot it. The point of view shots from that shark are so terrifying. They build suspense so well. Bruce the Shark absolutely deserves this spot.
Okay, great choice. A little outside the box. I appreciate that. So I went with something a little bit more probably inside the box.
Okay.
Probably, in my opinion, one of the best villains of all time. I debated putting her at the number one spot for me because of one particular scene.
I bet I know who this is just because you said her.
I went with Annie Wilkes, played by Kathy Bates in Misery. Stephen King's, done a lot of great characters, but this one, a true psychopath and just terrifying. She obviously got an Oscar for the portrayal of this character. One of the scenes about where she explains when she watches watches those movies and how things aren't fair and she loses it on screen, like one of the most intense scenes probably ever portrayed by a character for me. And then the one scene that makes her earn this spot is the hobbling scene. If you've not seen the hobbling scene, maybe just don't. Maybe just live your life without ever seeing this.
My ankle hurts, honestly, right now as you talk about it. That's not a lie.
One of the most intense scenes I've ever seen, and she got the Oscar for this. She earned this number 2 spot. As much as a shark is scary, this is scarier.
See, it's funny. It is a battle of, I think, realism. Two very real horrors that, you can kind of face in the real world. Like, we know sharks are real and people do die to sharks. People also die to crazies. I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to say this right now because Annie Wilkes was on my honorable mentions, and my argument for her and actually why she's so scary, and just again, because you picked it, I can't argue. She's scary now because she is the internet. Demanding that an artist create the art how they want it to be made and the depths that she'll go to make that happen, I think is a very interesting contrast to today's world and how the internet thinks it owns creative properties. So I thought today, as I was kind of just going through my list, that little scene where she screams at him, I'm like, it's today.
Yeah.
so I thought that was really scary. I'm going to give this to you.
I feel like you're giving it to me. Awesome. But I had 2 arguments that I was ready to throw back at you. Number 1. Okay. So King actually revealed in an interview that Annie was actually the personification of drugs and addiction in his life and how that held him back, which is really dark for me. You know what I mean? When you see that character came from that dark place in his mind, scary.
That's fascinating,
right?
Actually. I like that.
And the other thing is, I grew up in Ontario, just outside of Toronto. Sharks don't really, I don't really, I don't really have a problem with sharks. Like, I'm not
You never
running
vacation?
I have, but it's not like there's just a shark, but there are crazies.
Have you seen Jaws 4? The sharks can follow you.
Listen, let's get into Sharknado, okay? But yeah.
Anyways, I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
I do obviously think Jaws certainly deserves to be in the conversation, but Annie Wilkes is terrifying, so I'll give that to you.
All right, so why don't you roll into your number 1?
All right, so number 1, again, I bounced around who was going to land in this number 1 spot, but I think it came to me to be the villain that encapsulates all the what makes a villain great. They're evil, they are determined, but one of the best things that makes them a true villain stand apart is when they have a point. And I think no villain has kind of come with a real good point like Thanos from Infinity War and Endgame.
Right.
I think he really comes in. I remember I've had this conversation about people about who's the best villain. I remember throwing Thanos out before, and someone's like, he's not even a villain because he's trying to do a good thing.
He's just a eugenicist.
And the fact that someone actually said that to me just blew my mind completely. Because obviously to me he seems like a villain, but to some he's not. And I think that makes a truly terrifying villain. Obviously his methods are kill half the planet. There's no argument he's not a villain. So he's so good that he has people convinced. You're right. To me, that gives points.
Yeah, that is dark. I mean, after watching that movie, how many people had the conversation about, but he's right, though? You know what I mean? Like
a lot of people, I imagine.
You know, that's problematic. I think,
yeah.
You know, you really see people's true colors and you're like, whoa, shit.
So who do I have to argue against then?
So I chose another Oscar winner.
Okay.
So this might be difficult.
Bill Murray.
So I went... I could have chose Bill.
I know you would.
Like, you know what? I love Bill. But I actually went with Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter. Obviously, you know, he's been in a number of films as this character, but I'm going with the 91 Silence of the Lambs, where it all started for him, where he started playing this character. Obviously, he was played by Brian Cox previously, but I think his portrayal of, you know, Hannibal was just... so intense. You know, the opening scene when the camera kind of goes down that hallway and it just zooms in on him staring out, terrifying. The scenes of him, like, you know, in that mask are just terrifying. And everything he has to say throughout that whole movie was just so intense. His voice, he's talking about, you know, eating someone's liver with fava beans and Chianti, like, you know, how do you get past that? From the first moment you see him until the end of that film, he is just terrifying. He's hyper intelligent. He's motivated. He has a plan. And that goes when you see his escape scene in that movie where he kills those two guards back to sort of a musical theme. And then he cuts that other guard's face off to escape. Like, that is a villain. He terrified me the first time I saw that movie. He was on screen for 16 minutes and won an Oscar for it. Terrifying, amazing, one of the best villains of all time, and I think he earns that number one spot.
I can see where you're coming from. My argument's going to be he's not even the villain of that movie. He is a villain in
Bill
that
is
movie.
Not the villain.
He is not the villain of that movie.
Buffalo Bill is irrelevant.
He's really not. He's kind of the crux of the story of that movie. But, okay, hyper-intelligent, got you beat. Thanos, also hyper-intelligent. Has a plan. Get the Infinity Stones, do whatever I want. And you killed two guards, broke the Avengers.
Right. But he was motivated by a plan to do good.
Yeah?
Lecter was motivated by eating people.
Ooh, what a scary motive.
That's terrifying.
But
Come
again,
on.
like, that's not going to win anyone over, right? That's someone just going, yeah, dude's crazy, lock him up. Thanos is going to win people to his side. That's more terrifying to me. Again, we're talking about all of space and time that this guy can manipulate. What would Hannibal Lecter do up against Thanos? Get snapped and turned into dust.
I don't know, man. I don't know. So
I know you've always said the superheroes are unfair, but
yeah, let's put it. Who would you prefer to be in a room with? I know this is a different argument. Let's just throw that. Who would you prefer to walk in right now, Thanos or Hannibal Lecter?
Thanos, because Josh Brolin's performance is great. No,
yeah. You know what? Okay. Okay. Thanos.
I know it's not an Oscar-winning performance. I get it, but I think that's just a limit of the genre. I don't think the Oscars are ready to accept that the superhero movies are that good, because otherwise Infinity War really should have cleaned up a lot of awards, I think.
Did you hear about Scorsese saying they're not even, like, film?
Fuck Scorsese. Scorsese's an idiot, man. Make a good movie. What is it? The last one was The Departed?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, catch up. The world's moved ahead, Martin. Maybe that's just me.
It's not even cinema. Okay, all right. I don't want to give Hannibal up, but I'm going to say that damage done
Damage done.
Damage done is gonna weigh in here, and half the universe. Although they roll it back, but half the universe that can win.
His plan succeeds. He absolutely wins. All right. So we're running really long on time, so let's wrap this up real quick. At number 5, Anton Chigurh. Number 4, Nurse Ratched. Number 3, Hans Landa. Number 2, Annie Wilkes. Number 1, Thanos. Real quick, any honorable mentions you want to throw in there? Because I know this was a really tough one.
Who did you have? Let me just...
I had Alonzo Harris from Training Day. I thought was fantastic. Denzel Washington's performance in King Kong Ain't Got Shit on Me. John Doe from Seven, I think, is just a chilling villain who, again, lives out his plan. And just my fun one that I was debating throwing in was Professor G.H. Dorr, who you probably don't even know, because that's Tom Hanks in The Lady Killers, where he's basically just the devil.
Right, yeah. That's totally
just
fair.
Because Tom Hanks playing a villain is amazing.
I had a couple. Hal from 2001.
Nice.
I thought it was a great choice.
I can't do that, Dave.
You're right. Just completely level.
So good.
Norman Bates from Psycho.
Yeah.
Darth Vader. I think we need to talk about him. But
I figured that was going to be the one you expected me to do. And I'm just, I don't know. I figured you had the arguments ready to bring me down on that one.
I did.
And in the end, again, he's got a redemptive arc. So I think I have trouble putting him as a full villain. Yeah.
I put Commodus from Gladiator.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was just, super dark. Kruger from Highlander. T-1000,
wow, nice pick.
right?
Kruger
Yeah.
from Highlander.
Yeah.
I like that.
Agent Smith from The Matrix for a lot of reasons. So those were sort of the honorable mentions that I had. This was a really fun one for me. I really enjoyed this kind of like 10 minutes of scramble. Who's going to be on my list?
So many great ones. It became really hard to really narrow it down. So again, I know we've forgotten some people out there, guys. Who did we forget? Let us know on the internet. You can hit us up on the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Let us know, guys. I've been Scott Mason.
And I've been Edgard.
And this has been another On the Spot Top 5. We'll see you next time.